Dear Ava, I am madly in love with a man who is just wonderful, and we just married just a year ago after only knowing each other for 6 months. But we're very happy. But his family is now trying to ruin it for us. They seemed to like me at first, but now they oppose me and speak against me at every turn. They are trying to poison his mind against me. I've tried to befriend them, but nothing has worked to change them. I have analyzed this 6 ways to Sunday, and I've made a list of pros and cons on what to do next. But I'm hopelessly muddled and unhappy now. I am so afraid this is going to ruin the greatest relationship I've ever had. I have no idea what to do now. Can you give me a direction? MK from Ventura, California. Well, first of all, sister, never, never, never again make a list of pros and cons. Ever. That is what we have all been taught to do, to try to figure out a problem. It seems like it would work, but you are using the wrong instrument for the problem. You are using the limited instrument of intellect when you would be better off tapping into infinite wisdom, which is available to you. So let's say you were a seamstress and you wanted to make a dress. What would happen if you tried to use a knife to put the dress together? Of course, you would end up with all your material in tatters and shreds. Your intellect is a knife. When it comes to relationships, you cannot use the knife of the mind to put something together, to create something beautiful, something strong, something whole. It is very useful. The knife of the mind is very useful for some limited things. But our patriarchal culture has put way too much emphasis on the intellect, on the idea of we must think things through. It seems to make sense to the logical part of our minds, but it does not work in the long run. The intellect is made for cutting things up, for dissecting things into smaller and smaller parts. Vivisectionists, those are the people who experiment on animals. Vivisectionists think, or vivisectors think, they can figure out life by dissecting animals. Sure, they can see what's inside. They can see what parts the creature is made up of, yes, but they cannot see the life itself, the wholeness of it, the meaning of it, the beauty of it. By cutting it up, they cannot know what magic makes the creature live, and they'll never find out that way. And what happens to an animal who is dissected by a man? Right, it ends up in tiny pieces. It ends up dead. In using the intellect instead of wisdom, the vivisector kills the life they are trying to understand. You cannot figure out the problems of life by dissecting the parts. We women who have been brought up in this patriarchy, in this dominator model culture, we've been trained by this male-centric perspective in this overuse, this improper use of the intellect in trying to figure out relationship problems by thinking about them, by talking about them continuously, analyzing endlessly the situation with our women friends. And what happens when we dissect a relationship? Right, it ends up in tiny pieces. It ends up dead. If you try to figure out a problem, if you use your intellect like the ignorant and destructive vivisector, you will end up killing the life of the relationship that you are trying to understand, that you're trying to save. This kind of analysis sucks all of the magic out of life, sucks all of the magic out of out of our relationships. We must see the wholeness. We must stop dissecting, and we must see with wisdom the life before us. Logic is associated with males because while both sexes certainly have the potential for both intuition and intellect, overall, most men tend to have far lesser powers in intuition naturally than women do. That's why we have the phrase women's intuition. You don't hear about men's intuition. And this is not sexist, it's just a fact. Because as a woman, you were born with a womb, the gateway to infinity and all knowing. You have greater natural and immediate access to both intuition and logic, both divine wisdom, which is the immediate knowing of all things, and human intelligence or intellect, which is our very limited, logical, figuring it out ability. Like the word goddess encompasses the word God, but God does not include goddess. Your divine wisdom encompasses all the power of your human intellect, but your limited human intellect does not include divine wisdom. So, which is more useful? Well, obviously, divine wisdom, intuition, the power to know fully and immediately without having to go through making two-sided lists of pros and cons with your logical little brain. How many times have I done that myself? The word intelligence comes from a PIE root meaning to collect or to gather. And that's what average men are forced to do because they don't have wombs. They have to collect. They must gather their knowing. This is not a bad thing. It's just not as great a power as what women have access to more easily. Women already know. We carry the cauldron of knowing, the immediate knowing of all things. And of course, as an aside, it doesn't mean that men can't have intuition. Of course they can. But it comes much more naturally and easily for women. In another great patriarchal reversal, men have told us that logical thinking, the kind they are expert at, is the superior form of knowing, when the very opposite is true. I have a friend who is experiencing a similar challenge with a new relationship. She wrote me about it, expressing her agony and her fear about how her new husband's family seems intent upon destroying what the two of them are enjoying. In fact, her situation is very much like this letter MK has written me. Her letter, my friend's letter, was long and detailed all the issues and looked at everything very closely. She is very, very smart, and she is super funny, and she's a very good writer on top of that. So I really enjoy her emails. They make me laugh. But she's in some distress, and she's attempting to use her intellect to solve this problem. She's afraid his family will ruin the relationship, but it's really much more likely that her own fear, her own overthinking, her own continuing analysis is what is going to possibly kill this relationship. And it's ironic because this woman is a great friend to animals and has rescued many animals, and would find my comparing her actions to a vivisector, she would find that particularly horrifying. But that is, in a way, what she is doing. She is cutting up her relationship to analyze the parts. She is dissecting it to try to find the truth. The truth, the path, the way, the answer is never in the little parts. She is overthinking. Problems are solved not by figuring them out, but by refocusing on the whole, on the thing you want, on the beauty. To respond to my friend's email, I asked the divine to give me a dream about her and her husband. And in my dream, and I believe this applies to this woman's letter also, in my dream, I saw her standing in the center of a circle, and at her feet were pieces of a pie cut out in the circle on the ground, 360 degrees around her. And looking closely, I could see that the pie pieces were actually like a fractal with smaller and smaller sections of wedges inside each wedge. And the closer I looked, the more I saw more and more pieces, ever more pieces, this infinite number of pieces. And I understood that each slice, each infinitesimally small wedge, was a unique and different possible future. There was an infinite number of possible futures, some wonderful, some blah, some horrific. The pieces were not all the same size. The ones in front of her, in her line of sight, were bigger. They were larger, much larger than the ones behind her. The slices in front of her, the ones she was looking at, were the couple of futures, one bad and one good, that she was considering. The ones behind her were equally potentially possible, but since they were not in her line of sight, they were tiny little slices, which meant they were being given no energy, and so they were less likely to materialize. She couldn't see them. She couldn't include them in her consciousness. They were not likely to become her future. She gave them no energy. So the big pieces in front of her were not the only possibilities, but the only ones that were real for her. She was standing in the center, in the eternal choice point, and she only had to choose a specific direction on the compass, a slice of the pie to step into, and that would become her future, for good or ill, depending upon which slice she chose to step into. The more she thought about a particular future, the more she focused on it, the larger the slice of pie became. The larger the slice became, the more that slice was all she could see, because it got wider and wider and wider until it looked like it was the only possibility to step into. But the other slices were still there. The other futures remained still theoretically possible, just very unlikely. The increasingly large slice of pie in front of her, the one she was looking at right now, was the future that contained the terrible events that would come together to create the destruction of her relationship. In that slice was the creepy adult daughter warning her father about his beautiful new wife, my friend. In that slice was the new husband being swayed by the creepy daughter's bad intentions and terrible talk. In that slice were the eventualities of him believing the daughter, in him separating from his wife, choosing to leave her, my friend, and the relationship ending in total sadness and grief for both of them. As my friend examined this future and put all her attention on the details of this slice, as she dissected all the possibilities, the slice got wider and wider, and the energy of it became stronger and stronger for her and it started becoming the only future that she thought she could step into. Right next to that horrible slice of life was the other slice of life, another possibility that she had been considering. It was smaller than the first one, but still much bigger at the moment than all the others. In this future, in this good future, the creepy daughter just sort of melts away with no effort on my friend's part, and she, my friend, and her husband become ever closer. They are blissfully happy and joyful, and they have a long and loving relationship for the rest of their lives. So this dream tells us that many futures are possible for us, but we must focus on the slice we want, not the one we fear. And we must not be vivisectors in life. We must not take the knife of our intellect. We must not use our human intelligence, which is actually fairly low level compared to divine wisdom, compared to intuition. We must not use our human intelligence to focus on examining all the parts of life in terms of problems. We must not use our knife to cut our problems up into tinier and tinier sections. We must turn towards the slice that contains the future that we choose. The future is not set. There are an infinite number of possibilities in an infinite universe. When a fortune teller, a good one at least, reads your future, she's not telling you what absolutely will happen. This is a spontaneously co-created universe, so no one can ever know for sure what is going to happen next in the next 5 minutes or 5 years. What the fortune teller is doing is reading where your focus is right now as you stand there in the center of your infinite choice point. She is reading where you are putting your energy right now. She's feeling into where your attention is. To her, that does look like your future, because if you don't redirect it, it absolutely will become so, for good or ill. But it doesn't have to be. There are lots of other slices. If we have a problem with someone and we keep going over and over that problem, trying to figure it out, we are actually, as we know, giving energy to the difficulty. That which we feed will grow. The problem with that person will always get bigger and bigger until something blows up. That's how energy works. Then something dies, then something has a chance to reborn. So it all works out in the end, but we certainly can be more conscious and avoid putting ourselves through all that time and energy consuming misery, sometimes lifetimes of it. So here's your 4-step, quick and easy woman's ritual. Step 1. Whatever relationship problem you are facing, and this works for other types of problems, but it's particularly good with relationship problems. Whatever relationship challenge you are facing, identify it in a single sentence. My friend's example is, his family is ruining our love. Another example might be, my mother is destroying our relationship with her criticism. Another example might be, my husband is refusing to share equally the responsibility for our lives. A fourth example might be, my children speak disrespectfully to me. Whatever it is, just make it very, very clear for yourself and just choose one issue for now. So step 2, take a piece of paper and draw a circle, and now make a smaller circle at the center of the big circle, and that will be where you are standing. Now divide the larger circle into pie pieces. Maybe start with 9 for starters, because 9 is the number of completion. You can make more or you can make less. Make the one piece, though, at the very top bigger than all the rest. Leave the small circle at the center hole, because that's where you're standing. Leave the top slice, the big one, blank. In all the smaller pieces of the pie, write all the possible negative outcomes or futures that your negative mind can dream up for that one issue. Now, why would we do this? I just told you that that which we focus on expands. This is true. That which you focus on repeatedly and continually will tend to expand and grow larger in your experience. But you cannot have hidden shit. And many of us have a lot of hidden stuff that we're afraid of, that we haven't acknowledged, that we haven't faced. And so it's sort of lurking subliminally, and it's undermining our forward motion into the slice of pie that we want. It is important for you to really get that there are many possible outcomes, all kinds of horrible ones too, and you are not going to be in denial about that. In an infinite universe, there's infinite possibilities. So rather, you are saying, yes, these terrible things are possibilities in the universe, but they are likely to occur in my life only if I give energy to that particular slice. So I'm going to mark them down just so I know that I'm not in denial. That's everything on the table. Most women do live in a certain degree of fear about their future. So step 2 is how we get that fear out of our system. We face it squarely on, but with a queen plan for rejecting them with our focus. If your example is the first, my husband's family is ruining our love, let your mind crazy explore all the terrible possibilities, even the really wild, unlikely, bizarre ones. So here's what I came up with for this particular example for the little pie slices. Number 1, my husband's family works on him sneakily over a long period of time. He believes them and he eventually stops loving me. Number 2, my husband's family dies in a terrible plane crash, and crazy with grief, he accuses me of hexing them. He divorces me, and then he has me arrested for witchcraft. Could happen. Number 3, my husband's family comes for a visit, and we have a big, ugly showdown, and my husband feels forced to choose them over me. 4, my husband's family makes up a story about me, sells it to the newspaper. My reputation is ruined. I lose my job and I become homeless. Oh, and my husband divorces me. 5, my husband's family pools their money, hires a Russian hitman, and has me killed. You get the idea. Keep going until you have exhausted every crappy outcome your mind, your negative thinking mind, can possibly come up with. Write those each in a single sentence, if you can, in the smaller pieces of the pie, leaving the top one blank. In the smaller slices, write one hideous outcome per slice and make more slices if you think up more bad shit. Get it all out. If you can think them up, that means they actually are possibilities and potentials in the infinite universe. But they don't have to happen in this timeline, in your life now. Okay, we've gotten that out of our systems. We're not in denial here. Step 3. In a single sentence, write the future that you want for yourself on your chosen issue. Keep your phrase in the present tense. Word it so it is positively phrased, what you want, not what you don't want, and make it more about you than about attempting to control somebody else's behavior. You are the only one you can direct. You are the only one you can control. In other words, don't say, my husband's family leaves us alone. Write instead, my marital love is completely blissful, a joy to us both. Don't say, my mom stops criticizing me. Say instead, I enjoy a feeling of harmony and peace with my mom. Rather than, my husband helps with the housework, say instead, I feel satisfied and happy in my marital relationship where we fairly share the responsibilities of life. Instead of saying, my children speak respectfully to me, say, I delight in my joyful relationship with my children. Finally, include the feeling that you want in the situation. That is actually the most important thing, the feeling you want to have in life. Use as many feeling words as you like: happy, peaceful, satisfied, content, blissful, joyful, delighted, free, secure, calm. Once you have your phrase, complete with feeling, write that in the biggest slice at the top. Step 4. Keep your paper handy. Whenever you start thinking about this particular issue, whenever you start to take an action with regard to this issue, whenever you are about to speak about this issue, take out the paper and look at the big slice and ask yourself, is what I am about to think, do, or say going to contribute to me stepping into this slice of life? Is what I am about to think, do, or say going to help propel me into this slice of life? Using our first example, if you're starting to think badly about the family, if you're starting to talk inside your head to yourself about how wrong and rotten they are, if you're about to call your girlfriend to complain about what a terrible family he has, if you're thinking about telling your husband, we have to talk, like in an ominous tone, so that you can somehow force him into taking some action that you think will help resolve this situation, and you're trying to make him do the right thing, just stop and ask yourself, does it feel to me that this is going to support my forward motion into this slice that I have stated so clearly that I desire? You will immediately know the answer. And if the answer is no, then don't work against yourself and your desires. Most of the reasons why we don't get what we want is because we don't have the Queen's focus to keep moving forward into the one thing that we want. This is one of the powers of the Queen that we teach in the Queen teachings. The Queen archetype can zero right in on what's important to her. She can clear away all the clutter of her mind and focus on what she wants. If we don't have that kind of focus, we might take a step into the big slice, the good slice, but then we might step back and step for a moment in another direction into another slice, that little slice that's no good. And then we hesitate, and then we kind of look around, and then maybe we take a step in a different direction. And we're all over the pie, instead of continually moving forward into the slice we want. Instead, we're just back and forth. We're waffling and weaving and dipping and bobbing. We're all over. We're all over the place. We're in different slices all the time. The universe cannot bring us what we want if we're all over the pie. Got to have one slice, and you got to keep eating it, stepping into it, looking at it, focusing on it. Control your mind. Control your ego. It's only your ego that wants to use your intellect to declare yourself right in any situation. Don't stand miserably in the terrible slice and take some small miserable pleasure in knowing that you were right after all. You stepped into that slice. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? Put your knife down and be happy. But Ava, I can't let people walk all over me. In this, of course you can't. Of course you can't. In this instance, no one actually is walking all over you. No one is harming you. No one is affecting you at all. What they say and do does not have to mean anything to you, for you are focused on manifesting your desire. They are meaningless to your plan as queen of your life. The only effect they have on your stability, on your peace, on your joy, is the one you let them have. And if you declare that you have a marital relationship of peace and love and bliss and joy, and you keep focused on that, and somehow your husband cannot maintain his alignment with that vibration, then he may go. And you may soon have another relationship with someone who can be in that same vibration. So be prepared for life to change dramatically if you can maintain your focus. Because whoever you want to try to control, whatever husband you have now, who you want to do better, treat you better, love you more, whatever it is, whatever bliss you want to have, it may not be with that man. Bliss is what you're going for, not control over another person. So your slice might not contain the person you're married to at this moment. So be prepared for life to change dramatically. Here's an optional step 5 if you really want to ramp this up. If you want to make this happen faster, go get some colored chalk and in a private place, if you can find one, draw on the ground, on a sidewalk or concrete or maybe your back deck or whatever you have at hand, a huge version of your drawing. And every morning, stand in the center as the sun is rising, facing the big slice that has your desire written in it, and read the words aloud once. As you speak the final word of the sentence, literally take a physical step forward into that slice, saying 3 times, "It is done, it is done, it is done." Speak the feeling words of the sentence and let those feelings wash over your body. And this tells your body to work with your heart, work with your spirit in what metaphysics calls the precipitation of your desire into concrete form in the physical. And if you like, you can sprinkle flower petals on your big slice. You can light a candle and set it in your big slice. Whatever magic you want to come up with to bring energy to it in the physical. So put your knife down, stop analyzing, determine the future that you want, and keep stepping into it. Let your pie be delicious.